something, you know. I mean, how did it go? It was a thing about, I can see you now, you're flying high, Kansas on the brain, I'm trapped in Maine. Something really frightful.
That's
and it got, thank God, I know a feeling it had another incarnation as well. But I really can't remember how I sort of, no, but it didn't.
But this, Kansas Morning, was a bid for the American market,
I think
was
it was, yes, an unsuccessful bid for a wider public, yes.
Yeah. People said, some of them said it was blasphemous and all that stuff. Did that worry you at all? I mean, are you religious yourself? Do you believe in God?
Yes, I do, and I am somewhat. I mean, I regard, you know, for example, the church service we do in our festival every year is a very, very important part of it all. That's because I suppose I'm very fond of church music, and that's why I like to write it for myself occasionally. It's a great joy to me at the moment to be finishing off the music for Madeline's wedding. And that'll have a new piece by me in there. I've done the Benedicite this time.
What lessons did you learn from Jeeves not working in 1975?
Well, that first lesson I learnt about Jeeves was that it should have been aborted and put to sleep very early on in its previews when it was out of town in Bristol. And I learnt then that one of the problems with the musical is that if you've got, well, there are two problems with them. One, nobody actually likes to do that evil deed because they think there must be some kind of blue line, we didn't do around a corner, and there must be a silver lining somewhere. And there's this extraordinary optimism that sort of takes over that somehow, you know, by the end of next week we'll have muddled through and we'll just rewrite this bit. In fact, I learnt then that you can't really. Once you start tinkering with a musical, it kind of is what it's going to be. I've seen it happen so many times. I don't want to mention any names of any current shows, but they've been rewritten and rewritten and rewritten, and you know from the very first time that you hear them that there is no hope. And I know, you know, with my own shows now, if I'm really being honest with myself, which ones are likely, if the score's all right, to be bigger than others, even before, you know, I even written anything very much.
You can do that with the show. Incidentally, can you also do that with the song?
Yes.
You know you've written a hit. You know you've written a hit when you write a hit.
Yes, but there's always the you know, the added ingredient of the lyric. I mean, I don't write lyrics, obviously. So if the lyric does go very badly wrong, which sometimes can happen, I mean, then you have to sort of bank the song and vary it and hope that you know, use it again someday.
What's the difference then, the basic difference between a string of songs and a real musical?
A story, obviously. I mean, but the songs, you know, I mean, perhaps I'm being a little bit flippant when I say, well, you can take one song and you can take it from one thing to another. I mean, you can't, because obviously, really, it's got to be the right song in the right place, and it's the construction of the music that is so very important. I mean, I enjoy writing in a kind of operatic form, if I can, and not using that much dialogue, really, because that way I know I'm controlling the architecture of the music and the architecture of the evening. Sometimes I know when I've got myself into situations where other values have been allowed to dictate, and sometimes if you get to a situation where you have to do something because it takes X for the scenery to move, really what you should say is blow the scenery out.
Your next hit musical, lyrics by Tim again, was of course Evita. That was his passion. The idea came from him, didn't it?
Yes, yes. It sort of kept me slightly sustained when I was in Bristol doing Jeeves, because I was in fact writing Evita. At the same time, I gave up on Jeeves by then, really. And I remember writing Don't Cry For Me, Argentina in a hotel room in Bristol somewhere.
How did you write it?
I think of something with a tango. I mean, it had to have a lilt. I mean, it had to have that quality in it. So I mean, and I thought it must have a feminine ending to it, and it started off much more sort of as a straight tango, and then I realised, well, of course, it had that, it could be done as a much more romantic number, and then it suddenly came to me that we needed an anthem, and that became the key to the whole thing. We needed something that would be almost the equivalent for Eva Peron to, as Over the Rainbow was to Garland. And then I thought, Garland, whenever she came on, she always did Over the Rainbow. And I thought, well, if we could find out something like that for Eva Peron, then we're actually onto how to do the whole story in a way.
Don't cry for me, Argentina. The truth is, I never left you. All through my wild days, my
I realised that that tune could be adapted, and also if I could find a way that the verses could be used as if it were that where would she have been performing? Well, she'd been performing, I mean, obviously somewhat in public, wouldn't she? Politically, and therefore, if she could we could find something which Tim could hang an idea on that is something that she could be saying to a large number of people, then we'd be there. And also, there was another important thing I thought of from my own experiences, having seen Garland once. I saw what must have been one of her very last performances at the Talk of the Town, and she arrived like about an hour and a half late, and the audience was, throwing things at her, and it was awful. I mean, and it was this destroyed woman who finally got on stage and tried to sing Over the Rainbow. And I thought, well, if we could do that as well, and we have Eva Peron trying once more to do Don't Cry for Me, that would be dramatically very, very effective. And towards the end of the show, we do exactly that. We have her come on and she gives what we call her final broadcast, and she can't quite get through it. And it, in a way, the whole song has turned on her, as it did to Garland. And of course, I mean, they're about as unlike each other as songs as you could possibly think of. I mean, and the role of Eva Peron is about as unlike Garland as you could think of, etc., and so forth. But the idea came from something I saw.
That comes right to the basic point when I've been talking to people about coming to see you today. And the thing that must seem an incredibly basic question, but that nobody seems to know the answer to, and I don't know the answer with all the conversation we've had, is how do you compose? I mean, what happens? What starts it off? Is there a pattern to the process? I mean, is it an inspiration like in the hotel in Bristol? I mean, how does a song come about?
It's a question everybody asks, obviously, and it sounds sort of either evasive or wimpy or something, to actually say, I don't really know. I can remember when I wrote The First Man You Remember, which is from Aspect. I mean, I was just playing around on the piano, and I just sort of thought to myself, fine, went off and made some coffee. I suddenly thought, God, what was that I was playing? And often I just play, and I play for fun. I just play any old thing, and I'm just doodling around and sitting here for an hour. And suddenly I'll say to myself, actually, that's a good phrase. And I probably found by accident.
And what do you do to make sure you don't forget it? Do you write it down on one of these?
Well, I write it down as quickly as possible these days, because the brain is now going. I used to rely on a completely different system, which is that if I ever remembered it, it must be all right, which is actually not a bad system. But I do write things down. I must admit now. I mean, because I think there are all sorts of it. I know this is all full of fragments and stuff, which half of it I'm never going to use. But I mean, it's the way to do it. But I don't know why.
Which comes first? Always the music? Always the lyrics? No set pattern?
No set pattern, really, since Cats, because obviously, by definition, the lyrics of Cats were there, and so I had to write
obviously,
music, obviously. But I now tend to do it a bit of both ways. If you get a great title from somebody, sometimes that triggers it off.
So, example each way. I mean, sometimes Tim Rice or someone would bring you, today would bring you a lyric that's finished, and you would set it to music.
Yes.
And sometimes you would say to a lyricist,
Can we throw
what can you do with this?
Yes, I mean, at the moment, I mean, I'm hoping to write a new show once I've got married and all that's out of the way. And that's the story of Sunset Boulevard, the old film that Gloria Swanson was the star of. I mean, I don't yet know what I'm going to come up with. I think I know kind of stylistically what kind of world it should inhabit, but I haven't yet really written anything very much for it. But I've got a few ideas. And
what have you written for it so far?
What have I written for it so far? They're all fragments at the moment. I don't know. You see, I have a feeling it's got to inhabit a kind of world of, it's that strange house, so something's got to be, these are only just little ideas. I think I could be, something very, sometimes fairly angular and strange, I think. I have an idea for what I think which I think will be a great, I think will be a big song, I have to tell you. problem because it's all over the place as a melody, and it's got to, you've got to think of who's going to sing it. Yeah. So, you know, that
what sort of person do you need to sing a song like that?
Well, you see, it depends in the end, of course, on who one cast it. I mean, at the moment, it would have to be a combination of Sarah Kiritikanawa and sort of Liza Minnelli, which is not very easy to find. But then half of the things, with Memory, Memory started off in a similar kind of way. You have to find a way of cheating it through so that it's within a certain number of notes that it makes it possible to sing. And Memory does it through various key changes. So it appears that she's really got right up there at the end, but in fact, it's changed gear downwards without noticing. So that's what I got to do. There's a lot of work on it, and it's very rough.
Well, that, I must say, when I heard Love Changes Everything across there in Sidmouth, and I, with my cloth ear and no expertise about music, knew that was a hit. And I would have thought that everybody listening to what you just played there will think the same about that. I presume it doesn't have a title.
No, it doesn't have a title.
It doesn't have a lyricist, does it?
Well, it does have a lyricist. Yes, it's got a young lyricist called Amy Powers, who's American, and she's in her 20s. And she's really not done anything before. She just submitted some lyrics to some great friends of mine who work with the Schubert organization from New York, and they said, you better have a look at these. And I did, and so I flew her over here. She's got an idea of roughly what it should be about, because the moment where that should happen, I think, in the show is where the Gloria Swanson character says they don't make faces like that anymore. The movies, we could just do it without using words. We just did it through a gesture and everything. So it's something to do with that. It's something to do with just a little gesture or something, or a look can do it, and that's all you need. Which could be wonderful, because there could be, but it's so early on yet. I might abandon the whole thing.
well, there's always time for that. But when do you think Sunset Boulevard
I get away
hit the stage
to announce my festival, which is always my great way of doing this, because it means I have to work then if I announce it. So I thought I'd announce it at the end of August, and then so it's going to happen then.
You see, you're just like a journalist, really. You need a deadline, don't you, actually? And so you have to set yourself, since you're the master of your own life, you've got to set your own deadline.
Because I'm terribly lazy these days. So, I think...
You're in love. You're madly in love, so why not?
These things.
Fun? What?
Well, these things. I'm going to put a pretty tune for Herge I'm going to put in it.
Oh, what's that?
Very pretty, I think. I was pleased with this. It has a name in it, you
see. Madeline, how did the two of you meet, and was it love at first sight?
Well, sort of Andrew seems to say it was, although the next time he met me, he actually didn't remember me at all. He introduced himself to me and said, oh, I'm Andrew Lloyd Webber. And I said, well, funnily enough, I do know that because I sat next to you for dinner at your house. But there was a certain intrigue from both of us, certainly from me, because obviously Andrew I'd known of for ages. And so I was intrigued to meet him. I knew exactly who he was. And there was a certain, I think, intrigue from his point of view, because he hadn't really met a horsey, sort of 27-year-old lady ever before that spent her time sort of making leather jackets and riding horses. And so there was an intrigue there as well. But we got on, really, straight away.
When was the moment when it all changed, as it were, for you? From friendship to love?
Well, it's very difficult, because I think it was probably much sooner than I ever admitted to myself. Because I always thought, well, no, obviously it's just friends, but probably in my own mind, if I'd really been honest to myself, it was much earlier on in the year. But as it was, he was a married man, let's face it, and there wasn't any point falling in love with a married man. And then, things developed, and, later on in the year, I sort of did admit it to myself. And, we sort of, July and August came along, and that was it, really. It was sort of pretty definite.
And when he's composing, as opposed to whatever the reverse of it is, decomposing, or whatever it is,
Love that.
Does his mood change? Does he get laser beamed into what he's tunnel vision into what he's working on?
Yes, suddenly you'll see a sort of glazed expression in his eyes when you're talking to him, and you know that he's not listening to you at all. But he's concentrating on what's going on in his mind. He does most of the composing in his mind, I think, and then tinkers away on the piano. But it doesn't last very long. But it's not something you can predict. It can happen at any stage, any time, in the middle of a dinner party, or the middle of a restaurant, or the middle of the night, whenever. But I can now sort of assess it and know what's going through his mind a little bit, and just leave him alone more than anything.
Do you think you're going to better carry on with your business as well? The Done Thing?
The Done Thing Limited is my little baby at the moment, and I set it up 3 years ago, and I absolutely adore it, and definitely I'll keep going. This is my office, and I love it. And while Andrew's sort of messing about with all business and composing and everything, I've got to have something to do.
When you read about Andrew in the paper, do you recognise the guy you see, or is he different from the press image of himself? Or the press image of him?
Yeah, I mean, it is, because the press seems to sort of portray him as someone rather serious, and he's far from that. He's the most fun person I've ever been with in my life.
Do you think you're going to get him on a horse? Have you got him on a horse?
No, and I haven't started singing either, so I think that's a fair deal.
That'll go into Boulevard.
Only on the Boulevard, but that's
definitely.
for Madeline. I was going to ask you, have you written a song? You have. After Evita, of course, the next big landmark was Cats in 1981, which we've already mentioned. Then in 1986, Phantom. I'll never forget the first time I saw Phantom, and Michael Crawford and Sarah in that particular production here in London. I was particularly hit by Music of the Night, but I gather it didn't begin life as Music of the Night.
It began life as a song which was written for Sarah. It was a song called Married Man. And it was all written round about, I mean, it was all part and parcel of the same thing, because, I mean, what really Phantom is it was the romantic side of me. But, for example, I could never let loose in something like Evita, being able to run riot. And I've been looking for a piece like that at the same time. And I wrote this high romantic song for Sarah, with lyrics by Trevor Nunn. And
really?
And it was performed at my festival. I mean, in fact, the actual tape, which is of it at the festival, is in fact the orchestral tape that we used to then demo what became Music of the Night. And it never stayed as Married Man, because everybody said to me, Andrew, you cannot write a song, when Sarah wasn't even married to me, when I was married at the time, about a girl having an affair with a married man and expect to get away with this.
Right.
So it's lyric as Married Man actually survived a very short time. I personally disagree with everybody. I thought it was really a very good song, and I thought she did it splendidly. I thought she had real chutzpah to get up in front of everybody and do it.
Well, let's take a look at it on television for the first time. And,
we should say, I suppose, that this is a amateur videotape taken from the back of my little theatre.
From the little converted church. Well, let's take a look.
I said, well, she's
Sarah didn't get to do quite as much in the second version as she did in the first, did she?
Put it that way, she's never really forgiven me for this. It always used to say, why should my song do I have to... Because she also worked out all the movements, you see. I mean, I always think she got rather too little credit for what she did with Phantom, because all of that sort of body language and stuff that was done with Michael and with Sarah, if you see the video, which was taken the year after of it being done at the festival, or Phantom being done at the festival, when Colm Wilkinson played the Phantom, it's very interesting. I mean, that girl really knew, because she was dance trained, exactly how to move and what to do in that song. It was all her, really. But no, she didn't speak to me a lot because of it. But she's got it back now. She does it in the concerts and makes a huge point about it.
But it wasn't the reason for your divorce that you took that song away.
I don't think so. No.
More complicated. Reason.
More complicated than that.
You said about Phantom when you read it. You said the story. I saw every parallel to our life, other than the Phantom, because naturally I do not believe that I need to wear a mask, you said. But you saw a lot of parallels between your life and the Phantom. What were they?
Well, I don't know. I think more, really, in a way. I mean, I never quite know, well, sometimes these quotes get embellished or slightly altered. I mean, the thing that triggered me off on the Phantom was, you know, that man whose face was very burnt away in the Falklands, and there was a
Simon
program about
Weston,
him, yes.
yeah.
And there was a program about him and how people reacted to him and everything. And I thought, you know, gosh, I mean, he's very brave and come right out of it, about it all. But, you know, the isolation that sometimes you people feel in that sort of situation. And I picked up on something else, which, as a consequence of all that, and I think with hindsight, I think this is possibly why the Phantom, in the end, is the character who everybody relates to so much in the piece. And I hadn't really realised this when I was writing it, that it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're the most fantastic model girl in the world or the best-looking man, and this, that, and the other. There's always something about your body that you don't like or want to change. That's why people fiddle around with them all the time. And I think that's why people have an empathy with the Phantom. Obviously, there's the music, and there's a lot of real love and passion in it. As I said, you know, earlier, though, I mean, one of the reasons I was looking for a big romantic subject was that there was a lot of romance in me that I'd really kept under wraps for a long time. And so, I mean, I just went for broke. I found the subject which I could. I mean, and it was one of those subjects anyway, which is bordering on the lines of, you know, between melodrama and not. I mean, you sort of it's a tightrope anyhow. So I just thought, go for it and hope that the tightrope holds up.
Everybody says about your shows that the shows are now critic-proof. But are you, as a sensitive human being, are you personally critic-proof, or do they hurt sometimes?
To deal with the first thing, no, they aren't critic-proof. I mean, I think we're about to see that something like Aspects of Love, which basically is a much more delicate piece, it's not been able to survive, you know, the Scud missiles of Frank Rich. I mean, it's I think any minute that will close, because it's one of those shows that, unfortunately, if you're told all the time by somebody, week in, week out, and it happens to be in a powerful paper that it's no good, it's appalling, well, people tend to believe it. So I don't think I'm critic-proof. I suppose the only thing that I do sometimes get hurt by is that there is a lobby of American critics who don't really believe, or they don't want to believe, that musical theatre is actually my passion. They sort of think I'm somebody who just does it, happens to be lucky at it, is commercially successful, and can just take, and sort of almost like comes in like a thief and raises money out of America and takes it all away again. But in actual fact, I care passionately about music because I live and breathe and eat the things. And that you know, you could, if you applied some of the kind of criticisms that are applied to me to, say, Stephen Sondheim, you could equally well take apart any of his shows, because nothing, no work, whether it be art or not, you know, is actually 100% flawless.
I suppose if you summarize the Frank Rich school of argument, you would say, oh, shallow spectacle instead of serious character development, long on pop professionalism, this is a direct quote, and impoverished of artistic personality and passion, no depth, all shallow spectacle stuff. I mean, that's, I suppose, the thrust of those criticisms.
Yes, I mean...
Over to you.
Well, if you take Phantom, for example, I mean, obviously Hal Prince's production is a wonderful piece of work, and I happen to think it suits the piece and fits it like a glove. In fact, if you look at it, he leaves the last 15 minutes entirely to the performers with nothing happening apart from the very end when they climb down and get into the Phantom's lair, and leaves it quite static. Yes, of course it has some marvellous things in it, because it's a flamboyant piece, it's a flamboyant piece of writing. But it was done here for 100 people in a church, and it had precisely the same effect. I mean, it sold 6 million double album sets, which is probably more than any pop record around at the moment. And that's more people buying the record for its music than can possibly have yet seen the show. So I console myself with that a lot of the time. I mean, it can't just be that.
And the other thing people always talk about when they're criticising is the provenance. Have you, I'm sure you've never consciously borrowed from anyone. Have you found out afterwards how often? They quote the Brigadoon example, for instance,
yes,
to do with Phantom.
That's a funny. I never really,
have you ever borrowed?
Never really seen that. And funny enough, I don't even know that song very well. The fact
What, Come to Me?
Alan J. Lerner was going to write the lyrics of Phantom and went through the score with me anyway, since he wrote Brigadoon. I'm sure that if he thought there was anything very close there, he'd have said something about it.
He certainly would have mentioned it.
Yes. He didn't. In fact, the only thing he did say to me is he said, that's one of the filthiest lyrics I ever wrote, dear boy.
But I mean, you've acknowledged your melodic debt, obviously, to Puccini in general.
Well,
but
yes.
people quote specifically the Lewis suicide music.
I've never, and I know that piece very, very well, I've never heard that. I've genuinely never heard that. The one I do, I mean, have to admit, I mean, I had to have heard, and it was not intentional, but it was the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto, and I Don't Know How to Love Him. They are much too close. And that's one of those things. Today, you see, I mean, I would have worried myself silly. I mean, I realised that when we recorded it, and it was too late with Superstar. And it's one of those things, inevitably, coming from my background, I would have heard. I must have done. You know, there's just no possible way. But, you know, it's not that close. But it annoys me because I know that that's something that shouldn't have got through. And I mean, today, I go through everything. You know, I play them to people, and I go through. I mean, when I did Love Changes Everything, I thought this tune is so simple. It's only 3 chords. I've never written a tune with 3 chords before, and I double-checked it. I played it to umpteen people, umpteen musicians and things, because of course it's a worry, but it's very difficult. I mean, I could, you know, what do you say? I mean, beginning Ascendant Clowns is like fighting like a piece of Bruckner. You know, everybody has to fall into the trap sometime.
David Land was quoted in the Financial Times as saying, what drives him? Is it sex, money, fame, love? I don't know. Is it all of the above? No. Is it posterity? Is it... What is it?
I never think of that. I don't know. I don't know what makes me want to write. I mean, probably in the end is boredom.
What would you do if you didn't?
Exactly.
Andrew, what does the future hold? We've talked already about Sunset Boulevard, which obviously is the main artistic thrust at the moment. And of course, the film of Evita is now in its 3rd glorious decade of preparation.
Yes, absolutely. I think a very much better idea that I'm going to propose to everybody is the film of the making of the film of Evita, starring all the characters themselves. See, it strikes me that that's a surefire hit. I mean, it can have wonderful songs and outtakes, and have all the bits. It has a bit of the original version of Don't Cry for Me, Argentina, and it's called It's Only Your Lover Returning, and had to be changed at the last minute. And all of these things are fabulous.
But as we speak, and I realise it may change tomorrow, is Madonna playing Evita?
Well, I don't know. The funny thing is you see, Tim Rice and I sold it years and years and years ago. And of course, Robert Stigwood was its producer. And I mean, last I heard about it was that I spoke to the Disney people, and they said that she had actually sung the score now with somebody who's a musical director who I know very well. In fact, he did Phantom on Broadway for me. And so I bopped off a note to this musical director saying, you know, how was she? You know, please let me know. And there had been a silence, a hush across the American lines at the moment, so I don't know.
Because Meryl Streep was rather critical of her selection.
Well, I heard Meryl Streep's tape. She sang it very well. I mean, considering, and I don't mean she sort of sang it considering that she was an actress very well. She sang it really very, very well. Whether, in fact, it would have been one of those situations where everybody said, this is fantastic, and it's quite amazing, this achievement for somebody who is such a wonderful actress, but it didn't quite have the thing to cross over to say this is absolutely fantastic as a song, with just a singer of songs. I don't know.
But who would you, I mean, if they rang you tomorrow and said, who should we pick? I mean, who would be your top-of-the-head suggestion?
I think Sarah should play it. I think Sarah Brandon is brilliant with the Vita now. She's got the age, she's got the maturity, she's got a lot of fire in her. She's proved herself to be a very good actress, and I think she'll be far the best.
We've been taking a stroll through the Hollywood studios here, and you're also writing a thing with Tim for Disney?
No, I'm
Noah's Flood or something?
No, that has been elbowed out of the window by a young lady called Madeline Gurdon. You know, when I first met Madeline, I think I remember telling you that the great joy that I had was that I was for once likely to get involved with somebody who had no interest in show business whatsoever. It's quite true, isn't it?
Absolutely. Show jumping, but not show business.
Yes,
That's right.
nothing to do with this at all. And she could break her neck at badminton any time she liked, but basically speaking, I would not be there, and I didn't have to be troubled with the whole matter. Lunch, Michael Eisner, head of Disney, here, very early on. Next day, phone call from Michael Eisner. Can I speak to Madeline, please? I mean, I was obviously thinking, you know, thank you for lunch. And I said, yes, of course, you know, but actually why? Because oh, about her idea. What is happening for Disney is a show called EQ, which is sort of version of the Cirque du Soleil with horses in a tent for 4,000 people that she's producing with Disney. And that's what's happened to my now.
So that your prediction of a few months ago has not altogether come true.
Well, it was undone within about 36 hours. I mean, I'm furious about the whole damn thing.
Where do you think musicals are heading in general? I mean, with expensive Broadway and all of that.
I think musicals, it's very hard to say where they're going. I don't think that the day of these very huge ones necessarily is over, you know. What I do think is very likely is that New York, unfortunately, will become less and less important to the musical community. That I think that the sheer costs, you know, and also the power of the New York Times. And by that, I'm not now trying to sort of have a go at a particular critic then, just because he just doesn't like me. And doesn't mean to say that, you know, that it's his fault. I mean, he tries to say what he thinks. It's entirely a fact that the world is changing completely. I mean, I've got, at the moment, 6 productions between Germany and Austria, and that's before you take into the mix what might happen now Berlin's around again. So it's a world where I can see perhaps shows opening in other places in America and not necessarily coming into New York, or that maybe you might find a show opens in, I don't know, say Chicago or even Los Angeles or somewhere. So I think it'll all change. I think that economics will be forced to change, and I don't think anybody particularly wants to go up against the barrage in New York all the time. And I know it's not just me, it's a lot of producers who feel that.
You must hear lots of your music lots of times, Andrew, but I mean, how do you react to your own music? Are there times when you're still moved by it, even though you know it so well?
Oh, yes, there are times, I suppose, when I react to it because maybe there are personal associations with it. I always find the Pie-Jesu and the Requiem quite moving, because, I mean, that meant a lot to me when I wrote it. It was such a simple little piece. I find, funnily enough, it's quite hard to hear somebody else singing, wishing you were somehow here again other than Sarah, because it was something that was very personal to both of us.
Which one was that?
Well, that's Wishing in Phantom, you know. And of course, I mean, in a way, I always think that's her song. I mean, of all the ones that I did, really, that and the Pie-Jesu probably. But I suppose all I ask of you, I'm very pleased with that, because I heard it the other day at somewhere, and I thought, my goodness, actually, for the first time, I did think, well, that is a good tune. I mean, it's very me as well. You see, because it's the intervals are. I mean, all the intervals are very me. I mean, it's that the drop, you know. I mean, not a lot of people would do that.
And I mean, take that song. Which phrase of the ones you played What did it start with, that song?
It
What was the
start-
first thing that came into your...
It must have, I can't remember, it must have started, I suppose. It might have just been, I can't have something like something, or something kind of, you know, something, I don't know, or sort of, something like that, and just sort of doodling around and suddenly thought, well, it all fits together. I mean, you know, once you've got something like that, that you're away, and it's just a question then of whether the lyrics are going to be there.
All I want is freedom, a world with no more lies, and you always beside me, to hold me and to hide me.
And say you'll share with me one love, one lifetime. Let me lead you from your solitude. Say you need me with you here beside you. Anywhere you go, let me go too. Christine, that's all I ask of you.
Be one love, lifetime. See the world, and I will follow you.
Share each day with me, each night, each morning.
You love me.
I do. Love me. That's all I ask.
You said recently to the Illustrated London News, quote, "I'm still comparatively young for a composer, and I think my main body of work will probably come over the next 10 or 15 years."
Probably true. Probably true. On the other hand, it might not.
But it's a daunting challenge. I mean, if it's going to be your main body of work, it means it's got to be more considerable than everything we've just been enjoying.
Yes, it might be very different. It might be very different. It might not necessarily be taken into musical theatre. I don't know how many more musicals I wanted. I mean, I happen to think Sunset Boulevard to be a great idea. It's an idea I thought of years and years and years ago. I first thought about it round about the time Evita was going on. In fact, at one time I talked about it with some length with Hal Prince. And I don't know, though. I mean, I haven't got a whole arsenal of other ideas for musicals. I have a kind of sinking feeling I'm going to find that I'm going to be writing 3 or 4 songs for horses. Disney thing. I can see.
Yes,
I'm just waiting for the call.
Yes.
I mean, it's actually great. We've got it terrific, fantastic. We've got all these horses and these actors. Can we have a little bit of music just now to bridge us through?
Is it going to be, after the success of Cats, is it going to be called Horses?
No, I think it's going to be. I don't care what it's called. You can get on with it, frankly.
People say you are the Steven Spielberg of music, he is the Andrew Lloyd Webber of film. Actually, the thing you share, people say also, is that, in a sense, you've never lost your love of childhood, childish effects. Do you know what I mean? I mean that in the best sense, actually. That, you know, that you, neither of you become over-intellectualized.
No,
You've
I
remained
can't-
emotional, childlike, where relevant, and so on. Do you sense that fellow feeling with him?
I mean, I have to say I don't ever think back with any particular longing to my childhood
No.
myself.
No,
I mean,
no.
I don't. I can't speak for Stephen. But I am, I mean, I put it this way. Lauren Marzell, the conductor, one day we were having a little walk around the church where in New York where my Requiem Mass is being premiered, with him conducting and Domingo singing and all of that. And I thought I'd pop the question because I thought I knew him well enough. And I said to him, look, I mean, there's an awful lot of talk about Philip Glass and minimalism and this, that, and the other, and I've not heard anything by him until I did try and struggle through one bit or something. And I said, what is all this minimalist music? Can you explain it to me? And he started, and then he said, no, Andrew, he said, I've got to tell you, there is no point in trying to explain to you what minimalism is. You're a maximalist. So whether that means I'm a child or terminally stupid or intellectually ill-equipped, I don't know. But I tell you, I cannot really. My mind gets bored too quickly, and I just hate being bored in the theatre anyway.
Bill Moyers visits Bernice Reagan for a delightful insight into the power of song. Next on MPBN, viewer-supported public television for your part of the world.
This program